Hello Slayers, I'm King Lincoln. Today we're going to slay the Spire, or at least review the game of the same name. Now, Slay the Spire is a roguelite deck builder, and that's two concepts I'm quite familiar with. If you're not, don't worry, I'll help you out. Now, roguelite in this context just means you have relatively short games, maybe 90 minutes to 2 hours at the most, but the idea is that you're going to replay this game multiple times. It's not going to be an easy game that you can just beat in one go. And of course, the 2 hours is probably the first couple games. Eventually you'll start learning the game. You'll probably be able to rush the tower in 90 minutes, maybe 60 minutes. I know there's a 30-minute achievement as well. As for deck building, well, we'll dive deeper into it later, but deck building really revolves around selecting a number of cards for your deck and letting it grow. Now, you already should be seeing my character on the screen fighting enemies, and you'll do that through drawing a set number of cards, usually 5, from your deck and using them to attack or defend, and then repeating this after the enemy takes a turn. Better cards in your deck means they'll eventually be drawn and used, and decks are relatively small here. You know, a 30-card deck is a huge warning sign in my opinion, but expect to turn over like all the cards in your deck in about 4 turns, maybe even less. Now, before diving in deeper to the game, let me just say that we're looking at this game due to it being on the Humble Monthly Bundle, but I also want to say thank you to the Humble Monthly Bundle because I don't know when I would have played this game. It's been on my list for entirely too long, and honestly, I threw it on when I heard about the game back on the Co-Optional podcast around launch, like 2 years ago. And honestly, I wasn't even reviewing games at the time, so I'm really glad I'm getting a chance to look at it now. So let's talk about it. Now, normally I do spend time talking about the graphics and story, and I'm going to be honest, there's not a ton of story here. I've seen one story event in the entire game, and it's not really worth the time. As for the graphics, you're watching the game, right? There's not really a huge, deep graphical system here. In fact, I would say it's possibly too shallow. You know, enemies have one animation or so. I really wish they could have done a little bit more, but ultimately this game is not about the visuals, it's about the design, and kudos there. However, do check out the cards in the game. They look unique, beautiful, and easily give you an image of what happens with each card when you use it. It's really nice. Truthfully though, I don't have much else to talk about with these two categories. It's acceptable, and the lack of story here doesn't hurt the game. I have been clear about that in the past. I don't mind no story, and in the case of a roguelite, I want to say it's fine. You don't need to explain everything, and honestly, it works better that way. You're here for a long adventure that you can replay endlessly, and really that means the action, not some random flavor text. Especially when you're talking about a game every 30 minutes that you have to restart. So yeah, this game was always going to be about the gameplay, with fast iteration and roguelite restarts, where you begin again from scratch. And as long as the graphics don't hurt the game, and I don't think they do here, we're good. I mean, NetHack, the original, was literally made with ASCII characters, as was Rogue, the, namesake of the entire genre. And I've never once had a problem with either of those games, other than their amazing difficulty. This, however, is far better than both of those. Now, I have been showing you pretty much the gameplay so far. You'll be progressing on a map, in my opinion, and yes, it is called Slay the Spire. I know you're trying to climb a spire, but admittedly it does look more like you're on your way to get to the spire. Whatever, it's a different name and whatnot, but as you'll be noticing, you'll be facing a bunch of enemies. Now, I have been showing 3 characters so far, foreshadowing. But we have, well, let's call them red, blue, and green for a second. They are actually the Ironclad, that's the red character with the red cards, a knight which focuses more on attack, maybe a little bit of defense. Then there's the blue character, the Silent. This is the poisoner of the group, and just the character who can really grind through a deck as well. They have a few other specialties. And finally we have the green character called the Defect. The Defect actually has a really interesting ability to summon orbs, and they can use them to attack, defend, or more depending on which type of orb they summon. All 3 of the classes, though, are different, and unlike most games where the character class doesn't really matter, here they create entirely different experiences with the game. You see, the color coding on the cards are major. Now, you'll mostly see the cards that belong to your class. There is an uncolored group of cards that can be mixed in, but it's really the exception. Like 90% of the cards that you're going to see in the game belong to your class. So yes, that ironclad character will mostly use his card. The silent character, of course, uses his cards, and your defect uses his cards. So it's not really mixing of these classes. If you've been watching me play, though, you should already notice that the classes aren't really that similar in the gameplay. Admittedly, each class does start with 5 defense and 5 attack cards, and yes, ultimately each character has those attacks and skills and so on, but the point is you really can't play them the same. So one question I'm sure is, how do you get more cards if this is a deck builder? Now, I have been showing that as well on the screen, but as you defeat enemies, you'll actually earn the choice of one of 3 cards. You can choose any of the 3 cards or skip it, of course. You also will earn potions, gold, and relics. I admit, I don't use the potions that much. Probably a flaw in my game style. I'm not that great at this game, but relics to me are the big thing. You see, relics are permanent upgrades, at least for your current run, for your character. And the player can get anything from maybe double damage for every 10th attack, the ability to get more energy or power, meaning they can use more cards in a single turn, usually in exchange for something like no more potions, maybe a curse. I know I got one here, the lantern, that lets me get a extra energy at the beginning of every combat. And all of this is building your deck and your relics until you get to the end of the current area of the tower, or the map. Again, I don't know. There you're going to fight a boss, and well, good luck to that. If you beat them, you'll move on. If you lose all your health, well, if you lose your health anywhere on the map, you'll die and have to start from the beginning. Thus the idea of the roguelite. You start over from scratch each time you fail. Now, there are 3 maps here, each with 3 possible bosses at the end of them. You'll randomly get one of those bosses to appear on each map each run. If you beat all 3 bosses, well, you've won the game with your current character. You can start over with them or someone else. Now, there is a little bit more to all of this to make the game more challenging or additional stuff, but I am going to leave that for you to discover on your own. The base game isn't that hard, and finding out about them as we move through the game is actually really exciting to see a little something new. Now, there's tons more of that we can talk about, though. There are special events on the map, those are the question marks, and they can give you anything from a random event to maybe a fight, even a fight with an elite character. We'll talk about those in a second. But those question marks can be positive or negative. They always leave you wondering what you might get, and usually it's worth it to explore them. The elite monsters that I mentioned, these are the ones that are have the horns on the map, and I'll show one here. These guys are hard. Depending on who it is, there's usually some trick to them. Think of them as almost mini bosses of a map, but you're going to want to fight them though, because the rewards from a mini boss or the elite monster are unparalleled. You'll usually get a rare card, you're almost always going to get a relic as well, and those are going to definitely improve your deck and be worth it. And of course, there's also campfires that allow you to rest or upgrade a card. I'll usually show upgrading a card here because it gives more power, but of course you're trading possible health that you might need for more power, which it's a trade-off. Now, which is more important is going to matter on where you are, but that's up to you, and that's all about strategy, something that's important with everything in this game. Speaking of which, the path that you travel on will determine which of these spaces you're going to land on, but you might want to choose more enemies, or maybe you'll want to take on the random chances because that might be interesting. I know personally I choose to heavily invest in elites when I can in the first 2 acts because that's how you're going to get the best cards. But there's a lot of strategies you can take in the game, and I admit I, again, am not the best at this. But here's the thing, this is where a big piece of Slay the Spire is. You have a random map, a random set of enemies, random cards to choose from, and how will you select the best stuff to get the best results? I'm not 100% sure. The fact is, I don't think there's actually one specific answer, and this is where Slay the Spire runs into a little bit of trouble in my opinion. Let's talk about the silent character. That's one of my favorites, should be on the screen now. I really enjoy playing him, but I find him to be a challenging character because he has a number of different strategies, and a key part is to choose the right strategy early enough to build towards. In this game, I actually started a Shiv deck by getting the accuracy power, but I never saw another Shiv card. I switched to going towards a poison with Noxus Fumes, but I didn't even see more poison cards. No matter what you do though, you want to keep your eyes out for other cards like Footwork, because it's always valuable to take that card. Didn't even see that on the run. And see, the thing is, the random number generator in the game decided it was not my game, or maybe I just missed something obvious. I took Noxus Fumes, but I never saw another poison card. I had the accuracy card, but I never got an option to get another shiv card. Footwork, honestly, footwork hasn't appeared on my last 10 runs, so it's kind of annoying. Now, that's the thing. The biggest enemy you're going to face in Slay the Spire is the randomized cards, and you have to choose what you want. If you can't find the cards you want or need, you might have a hard time winning, or you might have to change tactics relatively late in the game. And I find it's the biggest thing that takes away from a single run of Slay the Spire. I don't know if there's actually a solution to this problem, whether it be design or through gameplay, but it is the one thing that holds this game back. There's a couple of the choices here that I'm not 100% on. The biggest one, though, is a progression system in the game. Now, this is the one thing that keeps Slay the Spire from being a true roguelike, in my opinion. It basically doesn't allow you to play everything at the first run. For the first maybe about 100 games, you're going to be earning these experience points, and they'll allow you to hit certain milestones where you unlock new cards or new relics, and those cards and relics get shuffled into the game. But I kind of wonder why these items aren't already in the game at the beginning. I guess players like the progression system. Personally, I'm not sold on it. The only other thing that I really want to talk about, though, is when you get bored of the game. Like, I found this game entertaining for over 20 hours, close to 30. I actually am recording this video late because I actually was playing for about 3 to 4 hours to get footage. And I'm at 30 hours, I could probably triple that time as well. The thing is, if you've reached the point where you're like, okay, I've seen everything here, well, hold up. There's one more thing you can do. Mods. And yes, on screen right now is Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't know what to tell you, but I can tell you this is a great mod, and it's hardly the only one I've seen so far. You know, the fact is, Slay the Spire has a good mod system included with it. Players have done everything from just making a few more events in the game, to new cards, new monsters, or these total conversions where we have a new character with 100% new cards, a new setup that has a ton of new features, a summon system, not just the orb system. It's actually completely different because there's new orbs in that place. There's not even any of the old ones. And there's now major enemies you can fight, like you'll see on screen. I'm fighting Kaiba for some reason. Every card of the colored deck, you know, the main decks here, is completely new, and it's a totally different game. And there's a number of these major conversions, so if there's something that you're looking for, you know, check the Steam Workshop, or maybe even make it yourself. And finally, I do want to mention a small rumbling that's in the news. It sounds like there's a beta coming up for a 4th character, and that should be out next month. It's a free update, at least the beta will be next month, and even the Defect himself was a bonus character, so I'm excited to see what's next. But I want to call out a good company that's been supporting the game. They've done like weekly patches, at least at first, and kudos. I mean, this is a lot of value for your money, and I love when companies do this. Now, one last thing. Normally I move on from games after I finish playing them. I usually just uninstall them, but Slay the Spire keeps me coming back to play one more round, one more game, 4 more hours. And honestly, that's what I look for in roguelite or roguelikes. Yeah, this is really good. Now, I love Slay the Spire. I think it's very clear from this review. This is a great game, but I do have a few minor flaws with it. To me, it's the RNG piece that really holds this game back from perfection. You know, I don't know if this is just my lack of skill showing. I just don't believe it's possible to win 100% of the games without knowing what cards are being dealt out, and that's the piece that keeps the game from, you know, a flawless score in my book. Obviously, it's just a little bit under flawless, so I will give Slay the Spire a 4.5 out of 5. You know, Slay the Spire is fantastic, and as a humble bundle game, it's even better. For 12 bucks, getting this is a steal. You know, guys, this one is worth it. This might look like a small game, might not seem like it has a lot in it, but I've talked about so much here, I think you can make your best judgment. And the fact is, all of what I've been talking about and more, like I've kept stuff from you so that you can experience it yourself, makes this game so replayable to the point that I really don't know if I'll ever fully put it down. Now, I've already talked about the squad and why I'm not doing a review for that. but I will be back soon enough to wrap up the Humble Monthly Bundle for September 2019. I'll give my thoughts on both of these games. I'll give Squad a small review. Now, if you have enjoyed this review, consider subscribing. I'm going to continue to cover the Humble Monthly games next month, starting with previews, and I will have some other gems coming up. Speaking of which, Liza should be next. So until next time, I'm King Link, and thank you for watching.